888-727-BECK. Let's go to David in Des Moines.
Hey, Glenn.
Hey, David.
I'm an English teacher.
All right.
And
the show must be painful for you.
It's very painful working with all these libs.
Oh, is it?
I worked in a place of business where a man assaulted 4 other men. He kind of grabbed them by the bottom.
Uh-huh.
And we were in a team meeting, and when he was confronted over it, he said something like, well, he didn't deny doing it, but he said something like, when I was told about it. Well, in English, that's called the passive voice. Instead of saying, I broke the window, you say, the window was broken. And the idea there is you kind of separate yourself from your responsibility. I recommend from now on, when you listen to Barack Obama in his speeches or anything else, listen for the passive voice. Because what he's doing is he's passing responsibility on to somebody that doesn't exist. So when he says it was snuck in there, what he means is I snuck it in there. See, he will use that voice of it something as if it happened. No, somebody caused it to happen.
Stu? David, I have to thank you for your phone call. It's great. Passive voice. Stu, would you do me a favor? Mm-hmm. You know the monologue I asked you to research for me for next week? Mm-hmm. You might want to tuck that in there. Mm-hmm. Because we have some graphs and charts to show you on spending and blame that will boggle your mind. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Boggle your mind. Pat, you weren't in this meeting, were you, this morning? Did you see the charts that we're working on a monologue for? No, you didn't see it.
Yeah,
That's right. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And it goes right to that point of passing blame. Okay, great. Let's accept that all of these things about George W. Bush are true. Let's take Barack Obama when he says, I'm not responsible for any of this stuff. Great. Let's do that. And let me show you what you're still left with. And it's staggering.
Well, I can tell you that monologue will get written.
So,
wait a minute.
In other words,
no, you should not use the passive voice there.
The result of that monologue that could be written should be written.
Look, I think you've been clear in the past.
In the past.
When you've said that monologue, in monologues in general.
Monologuing.
So I think what he's been clear in the past is that he has been consistent in saying to me that monologue should be written.
Right. It should be written, and writing will occur.
You got to play that again, Barack Obama, man. This is the latest statement on healthcare and the doctors. Remember, the big selling point is, remember, what were they saying about me and Sarah Palin? Oh, they're saying that we're going to take your doctors away and right? That was the big thing. Listen carefully.
We said from the start.
This is yesterday.
That it was going to be important for us to be consistent in saying to people, if you want to keep the health insurance you got, you can keep it. That you're not going to have anybody getting in between you and your doctor in your decision making. And I think that some of the provisions that got snuck in might have violated that pledge.
It's like when you break your mom's vase and she asks you about it. You're like, look, Mom, I think I've said from the start that it was going to be important for me to be consistent in saying to people that you can have vases that if you want to keep your vase, they shouldn't be broken. But then there are those who have
violated
that pledge.
That's great.
Jeez.
He knows. You're right. It's the self-correction thing. He knows he can't say certain things.
Yeah. He's trying to tell the truth. This is what all politicians do. I learned this by being one time with George W. Bush in the Oval Office in a conversation where I couldn't bring in a pen, I couldn't bring in a recorder, I couldn't bring in a piece of paper, I couldn't ever. I could talk about, how did they phrase it? I could talk about my impressions of what the president was saying, but I could never quote him on saying it. But I could speak about the impressions that I had. Let me tell you this. Anybody who thinks that that guy was dumb, didn't know what was going on, didn't ever actually sit in a frank conversation with him.
Yeah.
He was laser focused. And I learned in that session that the reason why do a little George Bush.
See, that's when he's uncomfortable too. Look, I had to kill the free market system in order to save the free market system.
Okay, so when he was doing that stuff, that's because he's thinking, all right, if I say, and he said it. I'm sorry. My impression is that he said that. He said, look, because there was one point where I got a little frustrated with him, and I said, because I was all over Iran and Iraq at the time. What are you doing, man? Mr. President, there's a few of us here that would really like for you to carry some of the water. I think that's kind of what he said to me. I can't carry all this water. Excuse me? Some of us are tired of being out there all by ourselves. You need to be quite frank with the American people. Well, I tell you what, you can't do that. I'm the president, and everything I say is being dissected. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm not just the president of the United States. I'm the leader of the free world. And I say one thing 5 degrees off, and I set the whole world on fire.
Yeah, how can you live in that environment?
Right.
It's impossible.
And so when that conversation with George Bush made me understand when he was telling you the truth and when he was moving around the truth. Okay? You had to listen. I said this all through his presidency. Don't listen to his words. Listen to the monologue that's happening just under the words. Listen to the overtones of all of the things that he's saying. You got to do that with all presidents now. I think you have to do. They're not going to tell you. Barack Obama for an entirely different reason. Barack Obama's doing it because he's got to send the message to the left. And he also has to send a message to you that you want to hear. Well, that's what he's saying here. I said from the beginning, to whom? That we have to be very, very clear with our language. Who has to be clear with their language? And we have to tell the American people. Who has to tell the American people what? That they're going to be able to keep their doctors. You see what he's saying? He's revealing himself in saying, I've had conversations where I've said, got to be clear. We have to be very, very clear when we tell the American people that they can keep their doctors. That has to be a consistent message.
And it was. Until yesterday.
Right. And what he's doing is, in those pauses, he's editing. He's self-editing. I know it because